Hello and welcome to Dominion Prosperity 2nd Edition previews. I was not expecting this. I knew that we were getting this relatively soon, but I didn't know it was going to be this soon. It's only been a couple of weeks since the Seaside 2nd Edition stuff dropped, and here we are with Prosperity 2nd Edition. Just in general, there was a lot more lead time with Seaside 2nd Edition, so this is... I don't know, it's just crazy. We're getting so much Dominion stuff this year. It's just ridiculous. I'm like, yeah. Anyway, it's so nuts. So, Donald X says it's here at last, but I mean, I don't feel that way. Like it didn't take long at all. It was very speedy. Anyway. So he's going to be doing 3 cards that are replaced every day. So just like Seaside, there were 9 cards being replaced for Seaside. There are 9 cards being replaced for Prosperity as well. No blanks this time, I believe. So presumably, there will actually be 9 proper cards removed instead of 8. And then we're also going to get miscellaneous minor errata on the last day, so we'll plan to go over that stuff as well at that time. Donald X also says, as with Seaside, I had no specific objective beyond making the set better. I took bad to print cards out and I added good to print cards. The key thing was it's the treasures expansion, but it sure had some weak treasures. Let's see what we can do about that. And the set had VP tokens, and I wasn't getting rid of them, so I wanted to get a little more use out of them if possible. Yeah, these are both things that people were talking about on Discord. So those are pretty expected things that, more stuff that uses VP chips and more usable kingdom treasures. Although the first couple of cards we're going to be talking about aren't actually treasure cards. So we're going to start off with Counting House is removed and replaced by Magnate. It used to be that I felt like I could make an occasional intentionally weak card. That could be fun to win with in the rare games where it was useful. I later realized that I would make those cards without trying, and so shouldn't try to make them. That's fair. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. These days, my rugs try to be perfect. Counting House is very weak, except for a few combos that made it powerful. Magnate also likes having lots of treasures, but doesn't require them to be coppers, and it also draws, but it can draw other cards, and it doesn't care about your discard pile. Well, it's all there on the card. Yeah, so Counting House was definitely a card that seemed replaceable. The only thing I shouldn't say the absolute only thing, but basically the only things that Counting House did was combos with Traveling Fair and Night Watchman, where you could guarantee that you have a Counting House in your hand at the start of your turn, as well as a bunch of coppers in your discard. Counting House Traveling Fair in particular is actually a very powerful combo, so long as you aren't getting hit by certain kinds of attacks. The minion attack in particular is a devastating one for it. But basically you buy a Counting House, you top deck that, you top deck enough coppers to make sure you have you don't trigger a shuffle, and then you buy a bunch of coppers with extra buys, and you have an extra buys and extra money, but in each turn you're drawing more and more coppers out of your discard. And probably anybody who's watching this is familiar with the combo, but in any case, outside of those use cases though, it's very rarely saw play. So not a big surprise that it's getting removed for that reason, and is replaced by Magnate, which is a 5 cost. Reveal your hand +1 card per treasure in it. Oh, you know what? Before I go further, somebody was saying that the images here were too small. So let me see if I can change that a little bit. Probably should have done this before I started. Probably should have. Let's see, what if I just double it? I have to do live math. There we go. That seems pretty good. I mean, it's kind of fuzzy, but hopefully that's acceptable. Okay, so moving on. Magnate. Reveal your hand, +1 card per treasure in it. So it's like City Quarter for treasures. Unsurprisingly, it is unsurprising that this would be cheaper. Well, for one thing, it doesn't give you +2 actions. But also, I think it's fair to say that the the City Quarter condition is like a better condition. You would rather have your hand be full of actions than full of treasures, especially at the point where you're trying to draw more cards. There are scenarios in which that's not true, like Gain and Play in particular, where you've like played a lot of the actions in your deck already, but you've drawn up the treasures that you do have. You know, so like that could definitely come up, but in general, I would say, you know, the action heavy decks self synergize better than decks which are a balance of actions and treasures. And so, you know, this definitely doesn't look like as, you know, sort of generally reliable as a card like City Quarter, even putting aside the fact that City Quarter gives you +2 actions and this is terminal draw. But how good is it going to be as like a, you know, 5-cost terminal draw option? Honestly, I don't know. It might actually be more of a money card. I could actually see that being the case. I mean, the reasoning is probably pretty obvious, right? That, like, you know, as far as you know, money decks go, they tend to have a lot of treasures in them. So, you know, you're reasonably likely to draw several cards. Though, I mean, it should be noted that, like, in a really, like, straightforward money deck, like if you're playing like Magnate money, at most you're going to draw 4 cards with this. And oftentimes you're not going to draw 4 cards. Oftentimes you're only going to draw 3, at which point it's no better than Smithy. So, like, that's not maybe as amazing as it might seem. If you have some way of boosting that, then it probably gets a lot better. If you can, like, consistently draw, you know, 4 cards or something like that. So, like, something like Save would help there, or, you know, like Haven or Coastal Haven, or like whatever, you know, kind of thing you could do to just like increase your starting hand size just a little bit, so that, you know, you can draw some extra cards. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, again, compared to Smithy, it's going to be kind of inconsistent and potentially overcosted as well. Although, in a lot of money decks, the 5 coin price point isn't like necessarily super competitive. So, like, the difference between it costing 4 and 5 isn't necessarily that important, and you might be playing, you know, with some other like 5-cost Smithy variant, you know, anyway. But it is still obviously easier to get a card that costs 4 than a card that costs 5. But yeah, in an engine, I don't know. Like, I could see it working out pretty well with like a Magpie deck or something else that helps you get the treasures into your hand faster. Like maybe Apothecary, Hunter, maybe Seer. Although, I mean, if you have Seer, then it's like, do you need this? Like, you probably have enough draw with just Seer by itself. But there's some draw cards that like synergize with getting treasures into your hand. Although, I mean, again, at that point, you know, maybe those are your primary draw anyway. Like, if maybe this is only a supplemental draw. Apothecary is probably the one that's like the most. Like, Apothecary is not good at drawing things that aren't coppers. Well, and potions, I guess, but you know, how often are you drawing a bunch of potions? But having a combination of Apothecary and Magnate would work pretty well in a deck that's like, that wants to have a bunch of actions, but like maybe doesn't have any thinning, you know, and needs to use those coppers for payload, that sort of thing. That could work out. Overall, my initial impression here is that this card is not going to be that strong. It's not going to be bad, I don't think. But I think the sort of base case of it being fairly comparable to like a to other like 5-cost Smithies is like a pretty reasonable way to think about it for now. Maybe there's some some use cases that I haven't thought of that would, some specific combos or whatever that would change that. But I think it is going to be like, if you evaluate it with other 5-cost smithies, I think it is going to be on the weaker side. Maybe better in money, but maybe not even, like, because again, like, you're gonna have, your money deck is gonna have some green cards in it. You might, collide multiple magnates, like the odds, like, I mean, in the absence of something else to like help set it up, the odds that it's drawing better than some other smithy variant are not that great. And then like if it's not, then like almost all the other smithy variants have some other upside that they're giving you. So yeah, I think it's going to be on the weaker side for smithy variants, maybe even in a money context, and definitely in a non-money context, unless you have something that synergizes with having treasures in your hand. There are going to be, scenarios where you do have those things, and it could really pop off. But I think in the common case, this is going to be like, I don't know. What is the worst 5-cost smithy variant? I don't know. People were ranking these recently in Discord, and I don't remember all of them off the top of my head or what people said, but I think it will be in competition for that, which it'll still be playable. Like, compared to Counting House, like, it's for sure better, I think. All right. Next up, we have. Let me do the same thing with this guy. There we go. So we are replacing Mountebank with Charlatan. Mountebank is easily one of the most miserable, powerful attacks in the game. It fits the theme of Ghost Ship and Ambassador. You get so much junk that you don't get to see your deck. It's the card I most wanted to replace in Prosperity. Charlatan also gives out curses and treasures that make 1 coin, but makes them the same card, which is way more manageable. There are a lot of cool interactions that come up as a result. So, first of all, Mountebank, this is a card that people, were pretty confident was going to get replaced because of how powerful and oppressive an attack it is. That being said, as with Ghost Ship, maybe even more so than Ghost Ship, it's not a card I personally wanted to see go. Like, Counting House, I'm totally fine with going. I don't care. Mountebank, again, I feel like it contributes to like a certain diversity of play. So, I don't want to. I don't know that we're at risk of this. I mean, Seaside 2nd Edition had Sea Witch, which is, I think roughly as powerful as Witch. So, like, I don't know that we're necessarily actually moving in this direction. But, like, I wouldn't want us to move in the direction of, like, powerful junkers aren't a thing anymore. Because I think that, like, the diversity of experience is important. And Mountebank is definitely, like, a pretty big contributor to that. I guess this, I think I will admit that some aspect of that is probably status quo bias, and I think that it isn't too surprising, and we are getting another junker here, so maybe it's not so bad of a transition to make. I mean, getting a new card is of course cool, but maybe even though, like, I wouldn't have personally taken out Mountebank, maybe it's like totally fine. Anyway, okay, so Charlatan, plus 3 coins. Each player gains a curse. In games using this curse is also a treasure worth 1 coin. So that's certainly interesting. There are a lot of cool interactions that come up as a result. That's what Donald X said. And yeah, so there have been weird things that came up as a result of being able to put things in play that weren't expected to be able to go into play. So I do have to wonder, like, what kind of rules craziness this might introduce. I mean, one thing you can think about, like, right off the bat with this is now you can bonfire your curses. Okay, like, that's cool. There's probably other stuff as well that will come up as a result of that. But what do I actually think of the card? Well, it's clearly weaker. Like giving out a curse that's worth a that is effectively also a copper, like a -1 VP copper, is weaker than what most cursors do. You do get +3 coins from this, which is not bad. But like the difference, I guess the difference between like giving out a curse copper that Charlatan is doing and just giving out a copper is not that large. I mean, it exists. Like, it's not totally irrelevant, but you have to consider that, like, in the case where both players get Charlatan, then the only way those points are really going to matter is if, like, one of them invests in trashing and the other one doesn't, or the curse split is uneven, and even then it's only like a couple of points difference. The thing, like, because the real thing that makes getting cursed bad, generally speaking, is the fact that it's a stop card that does nothing. And copper is a stop card that doesn't do very much. So it's also bad, but it isn't as bad. So, again, like, that's why I'm saying, compared to other cursors, like, Witch or whatever, like, I think the below the line text is like going to be a very noticeable drawback. Like, getting getting hit by a Charlatan attack is going to push your money density towards 1, as in like 1 coin per card in your deck, or a hand of 5-card hand, it pushes it towards 5. Mountebank was pushing it towards 0.5 or 2.5 for a handful of cards, which is like a significant difference. I mean, Witch, a card like Witch is just straight up pushing it downward, but it isn't adding as many stop cards. So, the Mountebank is also doing more to push money density as the relevant metric for your deck, because it's adding enough stop cards that it becomes harder and harder to like draw cards. Yeah, so like I think Charlatan is going to be kind of like Soothsayer, in that it's like sometimes you want it, but sometimes you don't. It's not going to be it's certainly not going to be like a Mountebank level auto pickup or like a Witch level auto pickup. I mean, will it be better than Soothsayer? Probably, because getting the +3 coins now rather than gaining the gold is probably better, is probably more important than the below the line text, and that's without even accounting for the fact that Soothsayer draws your opponent a card, which is a pretty big drawback. So I do think it'll be better than Soothsayer. Trying to think, what other cursing attacks do we have other than that in the Witches? Ill-gotten gains is like a weird thing to compare, or like followers. It's not really much point in comparing them to those. I mean, I think it'll be better than ill-gotten gains, I guess, but whatever. I'm sure I'm overlooking something, but like, this is, we don't have like a moderate strength ruins junker, right? We've got Cultist, which is really, really strong, and then we've got Marauder, which is really, really weak. So otherwise, I would say, it might be interesting to compare this to like a moderate strength ruins junker, because where the ruins are doing nothing but also aren't costing you, well, they're not doing totally nothing, but you could you could say that in the general case, they're doing like roughly nothing. It's like a do nothing card, but it doesn't cost you any points. Then here you get a card that does a little bit, or at least more consistently does something, but then also costs you the points. But yeah, we don't have, that card doesn't exist, so I can't really compare it. But I think it is an interesting to compare, at least like the design concept there. So I mean, like, it'll definitely be better than Marauder. Soothsayer is better than Marauder. Like, whatever. Like, that's not saying a whole lot. But yeah, I mean, maybe one nice thing about this card is just it'll land in a different spot in terms of chunking power level than some other things. I mean, I feel like I must be forgetting something. But I don't know. There's the 3 witches, and then there's like the ruins attacks, ill-gotten gains, there's followers. Like, what else gives out versus I don't know. There's probably like 17 cards that I'm just forgetting about right now, but whatever. So yeah, this I mean, it definitely seems like an interesting card, and I am looking forward to finding out all of the interesting things that the below the line text does that I'm not thinking of other than Bonfire. I mean, one thing that did occur to me that I don't know that is very important, but is you can end up in this situation if Warlord is on the board where you're like, oh no, I can't play my 3rd curse. Oh no, wait, Warlord is actions. Never mind. Okay, that doesn't matter. Never mind. Is there anything else that would care about like the number in play, or like what cards you have in play, or that sort of thing? No. You could use curses into Highwayman, which is amusing. Yeah, I don't know. All right, let's move on to the last card for today, which I need to reset the size of again. All right, so Contraband was a cool idea, but you basically never want it. You want to buy the cards you want, especially when it's O provinces, and being a gold for 5 doesn't make up the difference. Yeah, that's true. War Chest fixes that by being a big workshop. There just have to be 2 things you'd be happy to gain with it. All right, so yeah, Contraband, what Donald X is saying, absolutely true. That's definitely one of the cards. Another one of the cards that I think we were generally expecting to get replaced. It was extremely weak. Not being able to buy provinces is really bad. And yeah, I mean, gold for 5 is not very good. It could sometimes be a plus buy of last resort, but yeah, it was a very weak card. War Chest, the player to your left names a card, gain a card costing up to 5 that hasn't been named for War Chests this turn. Okay, so what they're basically saying, why it says War Chests, is because if you play 1 War Chest and they name a card, you can gain a different card. And now you play the second one and they name another card, and that both of those apply to that War Chest. So it's not like it'd be easy to read that like as each War Chest you name 1 card that War Chest cannot gain, but that's not how it works. The way it's cumulative. So each additional War Chest that you play, they get to name another thing. Now the good thing, unlike Contraband, is that the first War Chest you play is only subject to the first card named. So with Contraband, if you had a bunch of Contrabands, you play 1 Contraband, they name a card. You play another Contraband, they name another card. You play another Contraband, they name another card. And now you get to do your buy phase with all 3 of those cards blocked. It wasn't like, oh, I can buy a card with the first Contraband that then you block for the second one. But here it is like that. So yeah, that will make having multiple War Chests a little bit more viable. Presumably still not very viable, because how many different cards do you want to be gaining with these things? Like, I think, as far as, I mean, of course, as a workshop variant, yeah, I guess you could call it a workshop variant, although it's gaining 5s. But yeah, as a workshop variant, it's probably not something that you want like a ton of anyway, because you usually like, you usually want to have like how do I say this? I mean, one of the reasons not to spam workshop variants is like terminal space, which isn't a concern here. But just in general, like it is very easy if you get a bunch of workshops or whatever to over invest in those relative to the amount of like deck control that you have to actually like take advantage of them. And so, I mean, there will be scenarios with cards like Ironworks, Groom, or whatever, where you do some sort of like you get a ton of them and then you pile out. That's not going to work with this card, presumably, unless your opponent is very inattentive, because they keep naming like whatever card, and now you're not going to be able to use this very effectively for pileouts at all. But the fact that it can gain cards costing up to 5, I mean, it probably will be worth getting on a lot of boards, because it's a non-terminal 5 gainer. It doesn't even have to be actions, so that's like less restrictive than University, for example. And granted, University is like during your action phase, so it's easier to do gain and play with. And your opponent can name a card, the card that you really want. So that's a downside too. But still, like, I think getting one war chest is going to be pretty darn common thing that you want to do on most boards. There will be times where it's like the draw card is Hunting Party, and then everything else you want like maybe one of in your deck. Like you're gonna have like you have your your one trash or your one terminal because there's no villages or whatever, and then the war chest is just kind of useless because it's like they name Hunting Party and then there's not really anything good for you to gain, and then like late in the game they switch to naming Duchy, and you can't really do anything. That'll probably come up, but I mean, this does seem like a lot better than Contraband, for sure. And like, I think it's going to be very playable. I think it's like just very often the case that you want multiple 5 costs on a board, and that you're just going to be happy to take whatever your opponent doesn't name, and then buy the thing that they do name. So, especially because it is a treasure and you're not usually going to be able to do gain and play stuff with it. I mean, there obviously are exceptions, but it sort of, in a way, it like lessens the sting of, oh, they named the card that would be the good like gain and play card. Well, who cares? It's your buy phase anyway. So yeah, you war chest for like your secondary piece, and then you buy your primary piece. I mean, I guess the thing that can be a bit tricky is either if you want something that's expensive. So like if what you really want to do is get like a Grand Market and a village or something like that, then they can name the village, and you can't war chest for the Grand Market. That can be annoying. But there's still usually going to be something that, or like 2 somethings, or 3 somethings, or 4 somethings, depending. How often you can get multiple of these? Probably not very often, I would guess, because the combination of like they get to name multiple cards and just like the speed of it, like it's getting the war chest itself is anti-tempo, because it doesn't do anything for you until like you have to draw it, play it, gain a card, and you have to draw that card and then play that card, and then it's done something for you. And depending on what it is you're gaining, like the war chest gains a 5 cost. It is a 5 cost. You could gain to 5 cost. So you really have to do that twice. Or well, more than that. How many times do you have to do that before it is paid out? 3 times? The first time you draw and play the card, you could have played that card when you played the war chest the first time. So now you're sort of break even. Once you've done it, or you're down 1 play, maybe. You would have drawn it twice by that point, roughly. Yeah, and then like break even when you've played the other card twice, maybe. I don't know. The point is that you need time for the war chest to accumulate value. So like the fact that you're going to when you get the first one, it has the most amount of time to accumulate value, and it has the most potential to accumulate value because your opponent can only name 1 card. You get the second one, it comes later, your opponent can name 2 cards. The trade-off there is not so good. It'll probably come up, but it probably won't be common. So I would guess that this is a card you're going to do a lot of playing with exactly 1 of. All right, well, that was a lot of time spent talking about a few cards, but hey, they're pretty interesting. These, yeah, they're all very different cards from anything we've really seen before, I would say. I mean, not like totally wild, but well, the Charlatan thing is pretty wild. But they're War Chest obviously shares some similarity with Contraband, but it's going to play very different, in my opinion. For one thing, by playing it all, but also you're never going to be naming province unless Highway's in play, I guess, or something like that. But and I guess that's something to pay attention to as well. As cost reduction is going to change the dynamic for this card. But anyway, but yeah, I think War Chest is going to play pretty differently from most anything we've really seen before. I mean, is going to have some similarities with how Contraband played for sure, but it's going to be pretty different too. Charlatan is definitely going to be interesting. I mean, maybe the fact that curses are worth a coin is actually not as big of a deal as I think, but I think it'll at least be viscerally weird for a while. And then Magnate, having the draw based on treasures in your hand is just not something we've seen before. So all 3 cards, pretty interesting, pretty different. And Counting House and Contraband, I don't expect to miss. Mountebank, I don't know if I'll actually miss Mountebank. It's hard to say. But what I will miss actually is the Do Not Mountebank emoji. And it's funny because when that emoji was first created, the idea was that the Do Not Litter emoji was too harsh or something. It's people felt like it was mean, and so then they created Do Not Mountebank. And then eventually, pretty recently, there was somebody who was talking about how Do Not Mountebank was mean. I was like, well, that's ironic. Now we have Do Not Charlatan instead of Do Not Mountebank, and your mileage may vary on which of these is better looking as an emoji. Do Not Mountebank pops for me more visually, but that might just be because I was used to the art. Yeah, we'll have to see. But rest in peace, Do Not Mountebank, I guess. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will be back tomorrow with another set of previews. Crazy year for Dominion. Until then.